The first hints of dawn crept across the sky, painting the clouds with streaks of pink and soft orange. The air was still cool, carrying with it the earthy scent of dew-soaked grass and the faint aroma of wood smoke from distant hearths. A lone figure stood in a small wooden cabin nestled at the edge of a colonial village. This was Samuel Cooper, one of the brave men entrusted with carrying letters across the wild and often perilous roads of colonial America. Known as a post rider, his job was simple in description yet full of dangers: deliver the mail swiftly and safely, no matter the risk, no matter the risk. No matter the risk. Samuel sat on the edge of his straw-stuffed mattress, rubbing the sleep from his eyes. His body was accustomed to early mornings, but that didn't make them any easier. The wooden floor creaked as he stood, pulling on his worn leather boots. He reached for his thick woolen coat, its edges frayed from countless rides through wind, rain, and mud. Small table in the corner held his meager breakfast, a hard biscuit and a cup of watered-down cider. He ate quickly, his mind already on the day's route. Dozens of letters waited for him, messages that could change lives, news of births, deaths, distant business dealings, and even whispered rumors of colonial unrest. In these uncertain times, a post rider carried not just letters, but hope, fear, and secrets. After finishing his breakfast, Samuel moved to the corner where his satchel lay. The leather bag was his most prized possession, carefully oiled to keep out the rain. Inside, he placed neatly folded letters, each sealed with wax, their destinations scrawled in careful ink. Some were addressed to prosperous merchants in Boston, others to farmers in remote countryside homes. Outside, his horse waited patiently. A sturdy brown mare named Maple. She stamped her hoof in the dirt as Samuel approached, as if eager to start the long journey. Stroking her mane, he whispered softly. "Ready for another long road, girl? Let's hope we don't run into trouble today." But trouble was always a possibility. The post roads were rough and unpredictable. Deep mud after rains, swollen rivers without proper bridges, and at times highwaymen lurking in the shadows. Still, Samuel had taken an oath to ride, to ensure that the colony stayed connected, no matter the cost. The first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon as Samuel swung into the saddle. The village was still quiet, smoke curling lazily from chimneys as the town slowly woke. Tugging the brim of his hat low against the glare, he gave Maple a gentle nudge with his heels. The rhythmic clop of hooves echoed down the dirt road as Samuel began his day's journey, the satchel of letters bouncing lightly against his side. Somewhere miles ahead, someone was waiting for news, and it was Samuel's duty to bring it to them. And so, as the sun rose higher, the post rider disappeared down the winding road, beginning yet another day of service, determination, and quiet courage. The sun climbed slowly over the rolling hills as Samuel urged Maple into a steady trot along the post road. The dirt path stretched endlessly ahead, lined with towering oaks and maples, whose branches reached over the road like protective arms. Birds sang cheerfully in the trees, their songs a pleasant companion to the rhythmic thud of hooves against the packed earth. The post road was no grand highway, just a worn trail carved by years of wagon wheels and horse hooves. Deep ruts made for a bumpy ride, and Samuel had to keep a firm grip on the reins to guide Maple around stones and potholes. Every mile carried him further from the safety of the village and deeper into the unpredictable wilderness of colonial America. In the satchel strapped to his side, dozens of letters shifted with every step. Samuel always wondered about the stories they carried. Somewhere in Boston, perhaps a mother waited for news of her son. In a quiet farmhouse, a wife might be anxiously awaiting word from her husband. And sometimes, hidden among the ordinary letters, there were those with urgent news. Business contracts, political discussions, even secret messages passed between patriots. The road narrowed as it wound through a dense forest where sunlight filtered in patches through the thick canopy. Here, Samuel grew more alert. This stretch of road was known for trouble. Bandits sometimes lurked in the woods, waiting for riders like him. Though he carried no weapons beyond a small hunting knife, Samuel trusted Maple's speed and his own caution to keep him safe. The smell of damp earth filled the air as he rode deeper into the woods. Every rustle of leaves or crack of a branch made him glance around, his senses sharp. But for now, the only sounds were Maple's breathing and the distant call of a woodpecker. After an hour's ride, the forest opened to a clearing where a small farmhouse stood. Samuel slowed his horse, pulling gently on the reins. An elderly man waited by a split rail fence, his hand raised in greeting. "Morning, Mr. Cooper?" The man called. "Morning to you, Mr. Harris," Samuel replied with a nod. Reaching into his satchel, he handed the man 2 neatly folded letters, their wax seals catching the sunlight. The farmer accepted them with a grateful smile. "Thank you kindly. My daughter's been waiting for news from her cousin in Philadelphia. Safe travels to you, post rider." Samuel tipped his hat, then nudged Maple forward. Encounters like this reminded him why he rode. These letters were lifelines, connecting families across miles of wilderness. As the road stretched before him once again, Samuel's mind wandered to the miles ahead, rivers to cross, hills to climb, and who knew what dangers awaited. But he kept riding, his duty stronger than any fear. By late morning, the forest gave way to rolling meadows, where the post road stretched like a ribbon of dirt between swaying grass and wildflowers. Samuel slowed Maple to a walk, letting her rest as he scanned the landscape ahead. The air smelled fresh and sweet, but Samuel's mind was already on the next obstacle, the river crossing. The river crossing. The Millbrook River was not especially wide, but recent rains had swollen its waters, turning the usually calm crossing into a challenge. There were no proper bridges this far along the post road, only a narrow wooden footbridge meant for pedestrians. Riders like Samuel had little choice but to guide their horses through the shallows, hoping the current wasn't too strong. As the river came into view, Samuel dismounted, leading Maple carefully down the muddy bank. The mare pawed at the water nervously, her ears flicking back as if to say she didn't much like the idea. Samuel patted her neck gently. "Easy, girl, just a little further. We've done this before," he murmured. The water reached halfway up Maple's legs as they stepped into the river. The current tugged at them, swirling around Samuel's boots as he held tight to the reins. The satchel of letters was slung high across his chest to keep it dry. Losing a single message would be unthinkable. Step by step, they moved across, the sound of rushing water filling Samuel's ears. A log drifted past, and for a moment he imagined what might happen if Maple slipped. But she was sure-footed, and within minutes they were climbing the far bank, wet but safe. Samuel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He swung back into the saddle, adjusting the satchel and wiping the water from his coat. Another challenge overcome, another stretch of road waiting ahead. He gave Maple a light nudge, and together they moved forward once more, the sound of hooves squelching in the soft earth. The wilderness stretched ahead, and the day was far. The post road wound uphill, climbing through a series of rocky ridges as the afternoon sun warmed the air. Samuel adjusted his hat to shield his eyes from the bright light and urged Maple into a slow, steady climb. The forest had thinned, giving way to open countryside dotted with stone walls and scattered farmhouses. The peaceful quiet was interrupted by the distant sound of hooves. Samuel slowed Maple, his senses sharpening. The post roads were not always safe. Bandits and highwaymen sometimes targeted riders, hoping to steal money or valuable letters. As the sound grew louder, a rider appeared ahead, trotting quickly down the road toward him. The man was dressed plainly, his tricorn hat pulled low over his brow. Something about him seemed hurried, his eyes darting as he drew closer. Samuel instinctively shifted his satchel to the far side of his body, keeping it out of easy reach. The stranger raised a hand in greeting as they approached. "Good day, post." "Rider," the man called, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "Good day," Samuel replied, keeping his voice steady. The man slowed his horse beside Samuel, glancing briefly at the leather satchel before forcing a smile. "Busy day on the roads, I imagine." "Carrying important news, no doubt." Samuel nodded politely but didn't answer. The less said, the better. Post riders were known for their discretion. A careless word could put letters and lives at risk. After a tense moment, the man tipped his hat and rode past, disappearing down the hill. Samuel kept his gaze on him until he vanished from sight, his grip on the reins still tight. Whether the man had been harmless or not, Samuel wasn't about to linger to find out. With a light tap of his heels, he urged Maple forward once more. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the road. Samuel's job was far from over, and every mile carried new risks. Still, he rode on, determined as ever to deliver his letters. The sun had passed its highest point, and the warmth of the afternoon was beginning to fade as Samuel guided Maple into a small roadside clearing. Ahead stood a weathered tavern, its sign creaking softly in the breeze. Post riders often stopped at such places for a quick meal or to water their horses, and Samuel was grateful for the chance to rest, even briefly. The tavern was modest, built of rough timber with smoke curling from its chimney. A few wagons were parked outside, and the distant murmur of voices drifted from within. Samuel dismounted, patting Maple's neck as he tied her to a post. She lowered her head immediately to drink from the wooden trough, splashing water as she drank eagerly. Inside, the tavern was dimly lit, smelling faintly of roasted meat and ale. A few travellers sat hunched at tables, speaking quietly over their drinks. Samuel moved to the counter, exchanging a polite nod with the tavern keeper, a stout woman with flour on her apron. "On the road again, Mr. Cooper?" she asked, recognizing him at once. "Aye, "Just passing through," Samuel replied, setting a coin on the counter. "A slice of bread and cheese, if you please, and fresh water for my horse." As the tavern keeper prepared his meal, Samuel stood quietly near the door, ever watchful of his surroundings. Post riders were always cautious. The letters in his satchel could be tempting to anyone seeking news or secrets. The woman handed him a wooden plate, and Samuel ate quickly, savoring the simple food. His mind, however, remained focused on the miles ahead. Evening would soon arrive, and he still had a long way to ride before nightfall. Finishing his meal, Samuel thanked the tavern keeper and stepped back outside. The air felt cooler now, the sky streaked with soft shades of gold and blue as the sun began its slow descent. Maple lifted her head from the trough, water dripping from her muzzle, ready for the road again. "Samuel?" Swung into the saddle, adjusting the satchel at his side. Another brief stop behind him, he nudged Maple forward, the rhythmic sound of hooves resuming as they returned to the winding post road. The post road grew quieter as evening approached, the warm glow of sunset stretching long shadows across the dirt path. Samuel kept Maple at a steady pace, his eyes scanning the road ahead. The stillness was calming, but experience had taught him that trouble often came when the road seemed most peaceful. The trees thickened again, casting dark streaks across the trail. Birds had grown silent, replaced by the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze. Samuel's grip tightened on the reins as Maple's ears twitched nervously. She sensed something before he did. Then, from behind a bend in the road, two men stepped out, blocking the path. They wore plain work clothes, but their expressions were anything but friendly. One carried a short club, the other a rusted musket. "Evening, rider," the man with the musket called, his voice low and edged with threat. "The road's not free today." "You'll be handing over anything valuable?" Samuel sat stiff in the saddle, his mind racing. The letters, he couldn't let them fall into the wrong hands. Many were personal, but some could carry sensitive news. Losing them was unthinkable. "I'm just a post rider." Samuel said calmly, his voice steady. "Nothing here but letters, and no coin worth your trouble." The man with the club smirked. "Letters carry news. News carries power." "We'll take a look anyway." Samuel's heart pounded, but he kept his expression neutral. Slowly, he shifted his weight, tightening his legs against Maple's sides. With a sharp tug of the reins and a quick nudge of his heels, he gave her the signal. Maple lunged forward with sudden speed, hooves pounding the dirt. The men shouted, stumbling aside as she thundered past. The musket fired with a loud crack, the shot echoing through the trees, but it went wide, striking harmlessly into the ground. Samuel didn't look back. His only thought was to keep riding, his satchel bouncing securely against his side. The wind rushed past his face as he and Maple sped down the road, not slowing until the trees thinned and the path widened again. Only then did he ease Maple to a trot, his breath coming fast. Reaching down, he patted her neck. "Good girl, Maple. You've saved us again." The letters were safe, for now, but the road ahead was still long, and Samuel knew this wouldn't be the last danger he faced. The sky had shifted to deep shades of orange and rose by the time Samuel slowed Maple to a walk again. His heart had settled after the earlier encounter, but the tension lingered in his chest. Every shadow along the road seemed darker now, every rustle of leaves louder. As they rounded a bend, a familiar sight brought a sense of calm. A small whitewashed farmhouse, its windows glowing softly with candlelight. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, and the comforting scent of baking bread drifted on the evening breeze. Samuel dismounted, tying Maple to the fence post, and reached into his satchel. Among the neatly stacked letters, he found one addressed to Mrs. Abigail Turner, the woman who lived here. He approached the wooden door and knocked lightly. After a moment, it opened to reveal a kind-faced woman with a linen cap tied neatly under her chin. "Mr. Cooper," she said warmly, recognizing him at once. "I was hoping you'd be by today." Samuel smiled, handing her the sealed letter. "Fresh from Boston, ma'am. Looks to be from your brother." Her eyes brightened as she accepted it, holding it carefully as though it were a treasure. "Bless you for bringing this, Mr. Cooper. You riders are a blessing to us all." "Just doing my duty, ma'am," Samuel replied with a polite nod. A small child peeked from behind Mrs. Turner's skirts, wide-eyed with curiosity. "Mama, is that the man who brings all the news?" Mrs. Turner chuckled, resting a hand on the child's head. "Yes, dear. Thanks to him, we know how Uncle Joseph is doing." Samuel gave the child a warm smile before stepping back. "I must keep moving. Still a long way to go before nightfall." "Safe travels, Mr. Cooper," Mrs. Turner said as she closed the door, already eager to break the wax seal and read the long-awaited words. Returning to Maple, Samuel adjusted his satchel once more. Encounters like this reminded him why he rode. Not for coin or duty alone, but for the connections these letters brought, tying distant hearts together across miles of wild country. With a soft whistle, he mounted Maple again and set off down the road, the glow of the farmhouse fading behind him as dusk deepened. The last light of day was fading as Samuel urged Maple onward. The dirt road now bathed in the cool silver of approaching night. Crickets had begun their steady song in the grass, and fireflies flickered among the trees like tiny sparks of light. The wilderness grew darker with every passing minute, and Samuel kept his pace steady but cautious. Riding at night carried its own risks: loose footing, wild animals, and the ever-present threat of highwaymen. But the letters in his satchel couldn't wait until morning. Somewhere ahead, families were waiting, hearts anxious for the words he carried. Samuel pulled his coat tighter as a cool breeze swept across the road. His eyes scanned the path, alert for any movement. But the only sounds were Maple's rhythmic hoofbeats and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. A crescent moon rose slowly over the treetops, casting a soft glow on the winding road. Samuel found comfort in its light, as though it were guiding him forward. Despite the dangers, there was a strange peace to riding under the night sky, a sense of being alone, but with a purpose greater than himself. After several miles, Samuel slowed Maple to a walk, allowing her to rest. He reached down, patting her neck gently. "Almost there, girl. Just a few more hours." Ahead, the faint lights of another settlement began to twinkle in the distance. Samuel felt a small surge of relief. One more delivery tonight, and then he could finally rest. The letters in his satchel shifted with each step of the horse, a quiet reminder of the lives waiting for him. No matter how dark or dangerous the road became, Samuel knew he would keep riding, for duty, for honor, and for the hope carried in every sealed letter.